You've probably seen on legacy media, social media, TV, your friends, or a bunch of other places about how the Israeli military is intentionally trying to harm, target, starve civilians inside Gaza. But military experts, very often when they come in contact with the Israeli military and their procedures, tend to come away with a very different perspective. One of those people is a British Army officer, former officer, named Andrew Fox, who's also very active on Twitter and who's been to Gaza several times to report on what he saw over there. Let's take a look at this clip where also he compares how the Israeli army conducts itself inside Gaza compared to what Hamas and Gazan civilians did inside Israel on October 7th.
Completely absent from this conversation is the imagery from 7th of October, of course, which is by some measure far worse than anything that's happened in Gaza. I have seen footage far and above the video they show people. I've seen evidence way beyond that, and it's so horrific I can barely talk about it without the hair on my arm standing up. You know, what Hamas did to Israelis.
Worse than I saw the 47-minute video.
Yeah,
it's the most horrible thing I've seen in my life.
So if you see the sexual assault evidence on top of that, it's shocking. And it's not a level of detail I think your listeners particularly want to hear, but it is enough to make me lose my voice over it, as you can tell, probably. Horrendous. Like, I can't even begin to describe how bad those pictures are.
On that, the Times of London just reported that indeed there's new evidence and testimonies describing the sexual assault carried out by Hamas on October 7th. This has been weirdly a sticking point with the anti-Israel crew. Even the ones who might have accepted the footage they have seen will not accept that there was any sexual. I'm sure people listening can know the sort of lefty firebrands that I'm talking about, who will say, no, there was no rape on October 7th. But you're saying that absolutely there was the case.
I'm quite tired of being gaslit. I know what I've seen, and I know what the evidence I've seen is, and it's beyond question. And there's a reason people deny it, and it's because the murders and the burning of kibbutzim, in their heads, they justify it as resistance. Hamas were justified in doing that because they lived in a concentration camp and yada, yada, yada. Obviously nonsense, but that's their position. When you throw rape into the mix, that's very hard to justify as the actions of a freedom-fighting resistance operation. And it kind of derails their entire narrative. So there's an immediate cognitive dissonance when people have the rape put to them. And I think that's why it's so denied. It's also damaging to the Arab audience, of course, where rape is not considered an acceptable behaviour. And again, that resistance narrative suddenly derails when you accept that Hamas went on a mass rape endeavour on 7th of October. So there's a very clear kind of psychology behind why people are so keen to deny this. And you can see when you mention it online, immediately the bot swarm descends upon you.
Yeah.
It's the one thing that triggers them off every single time. You can guarantee your mentions will be full of denial of this stuff. But, you know, it wasn't just rape. It was mutilation and just absolutely unspeakable ways to treat a human body, quite frankly. And this new reports, it's, you know, some of the evidence they talk about in this is stuff I've seen. And, you know, people go, why haven't they released it? Well, when in any rape in the West ever do we release the evidence? You know, the victims have a right to privacy. They have a right to not have their worst moments released to the world for people to mock and say that it's faked and deny that what happened to them happened to them. Of course, you know, it's this double standard that gets applied to Israel. Why haven't you showed your women being raped to the world? It's like, listen to yourselves when you ask this question. You know, absolutely horrifying.
It was even worse in that the IDF are being accused of behaving like that in Gaza. Now, maybe it's my bias, but I find that very hard to believe. And I've not seen any footage of that. I've not seen any, and there's some footage you might find of sort of IDF sort of standing in a circle trying to hide something that's going on.
In prison, yeah.
What was that?
It was at the prison. It's the detention facility inside Israel itself. There's a video where essentially the guys put their shields up and you see a prisoner getting forced against the wall. But again, there's no evidence of rape there. The soldiers involved who were arrested weren't charged with rape. They are now suing people who published that they were rapists. So, you know, they're confident enough in their own innocence that they are taking this to civil court for defamation. And again, there's no actual evidence of rape there. And the one other major report throughout the war about rape by the IDF was Al Shifa Hospital. And Al Jazeera published that. And then the woman who made the allegation retracted 24 hours later. So Al Jazeera were forced to delete that article and retract it. There's lots of allegations. And quite frequently we see the old deny, reverse accusation piece here that you get in domestic abuses, where the abuser alleges they are the victim of what they've actually done. And you see this all the time, that inversion. You know, there was a spate of videos that came out last year of like beheaded babies in Gaza. You know, bombs don't behead people and leave the rest of the body untouched. That's not how high explosive munitions work. It was clearly a Hamas attempt to mock Israel for the mistake they made on that reporting of 7th of October, talking about 40 beheaded babies, which was acknowledged as a mistake. It was acknowledged as misreporting. You know, the IDF never claimed it, but Hamas saw an opportunity to mock Israel for that. And yeah, it's a pattern that you've seen time and time again throughout this conflict.
Andrew Fox there. And yeah, I mean, I've been looking at footage from Gaza. What you see is explosions. You see a lot of suffering on the Palestinian side. We've seen some videos or pictures of IDF soldiers like wearing the lingerie of the women on top of their uniform, which is unacceptable, but not particularly harmful. But definitely not something you should be doing. I think there was some video of some IDF soldiers riding bicycles around that were hanging around there, which is, you know, okay. There was that video of the bunch of men that they had arrested, that they had stripped them down to make sure they don't have explosives on them. That was supposed to be some horrific crime that was committed. There's some talk about on the humanitarian aid distribution centers that there was some shooting going on over there by the IDF soldiers. But again, we don't have any video of like someone. We just don't have any videos of anything remotely like what happened on October 7th of an IDF soldier just going up to someone and point blank shooting them, point blank range. Just grabbing random people, women, and dragging them off into Israel. Mutilating bodies, things like that. But the Palestinians will draw an equivalency, or not even equivalency. They'll say what Israel is doing is much worse because the casualties are higher. But then again, you know, there were higher German casualties in the Second World War. There were higher Japanese casualties because they lost. So that's something to think about when you start wars. But the actions are just different, and the intent is different. And someone like Andrew Fox there, who visited the sites and saw the footage from both sides, is able to see that quite clearly. While, you know, on social media, well, people are able to get away with lazy and sloppy comparisons, my friends. All right, guys, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, Insightful Nomad, and I will see you next time.